Don't be afraid to make mistakes. And that's very liberating. When we realize and accept the fact that we are indeed fallible. I don't know why it should be such a surprise to us, but somehow it's something that we can't quite integrate in our lives and actions. When we realize that, though, and realize that we're going to make a lot of mistakes in everything, in our practice, in our relationships, in our work, in everything, and that it's okay. We don't have to be afraid to make mistakes. And if we can somehow come to that acceptance of our fallibility, it makes it much simpler and much easier then to open. There's a tremendous power of connectedness, tremendously deep connectedness, which can come when we are in our most vulnerable space. I'd like to share a story with you that goes back quite a few years in my practice, but it very much relates to this point. I had been doing a sesshin, Zen sesshin with Sasaki Roshi. And he has the ability to be this amazingly fierce Zen master, although he has many different sides. He was being quite fierce with me. And in that practice you do koans. He gives you a koan and you go in, and 4 times a day you give him your response to the koan. And so I'm going to this sesshin and I'm doing my koans. And I go into sanzen, that's what it's called, the interviews. And he asks me the question and I give him my answer. Very stupid. Go in next time. It's all very formal. There's kind of bowing and it's all very formal, very structured. He rings his bell, you leave. Next time I go in, too much ego. This went on and on, day after day. Didn't understand anything, too stupid. And I was just feeling worse and worse and worse. And everything was getting tight and tense. It was like a very bad trip. I was feeling so much anxiety about going in for these interviews. Finally, about halfway through the sesshin, I just gave up. I just didn't care anymore. And I went in with that attitude, it just doesn't matter. So he took a little pity on me and gave me an easier koan. He kind of took me a step backwards. And the koan he gave me at this time was, how do you manifest Buddha nature while chanting a sutra? Okay, it seemed even to me at that time fairly straightforward. However, what perhaps he didn't know, and perhaps he did, was that particular koan touched this deep button in my mind about singing and chanting, which went back to a 3rd grade music teacher who told me just to mouth the words. It actually was appropriate advice, and advice which had been reinforced over the years many times. And so over the years there was just this tremendous inhibition and fear which had been built up about, singing or chanting in public. So here I am in this very intense situation, with this Zen master who's there like a rock and who's been really fierce, and I'm supposed to go in and kind of demonstrate my Buddha nature by chanting a little sutra. So I spend the next sitting periods rehearsing in my mind 1 billion times, the fragment of a chant that I was going to do. I go in, the bell rings for the interviews, go up. I'm in a totally awful state. I'm just feeling so raw and exposed and fearful and open in not a very pleasant way, sort of like an open wound. I go in, I do my bow, he asks me the koan, I start chanting. I got the whole thing mixed up, did it backwards. And I'm sitting there doing this and feeling just so totally exposed. And he looked at me, and very softly he said, "Very good." And it was such an incredible moment, because I was so open and so exposed, it's as if the words literally touched my heart. Because there was nothing at that point protecting it or defending it. And it was such a beautiful lesson in what is possible, in the kind of connectedness that's possible when, either willingly or unwillingly, we find ourselves in that very open, vulnerable space. So it's a powerful space to be in, and we can actually come to appreciate it rather than to be afraid of it.